IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. As we go into God knows what week of the lockdown, we've been trying to make sure that we get as much content out to you as possible. We had some interesting episodes in the last week. Cyrus Says we had Angad Singh Ranyal on it. That was a fun episode to listen to. On the Filter Coffee podcast, we had Taslima Nasleen and Arunav Sinha on that. That was another great conversation. Karthik Srinivasan joined Varun on Advertising is Dead. And guys, look for Pratik Oswal on Paisa Vaisa podcast with Anupam Gupta. That was another great episode. I'd also like to let people know that the show that we're doing with Mr. Ashish Vidyarthi, Begin the Journey, is now going to be releasing 3 times a week. So do check that out. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. And let's get started with your show.
You've tuned into a show called Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch and you were expecting a spoiler-free episode. So there are many spoilers on this episode. Kripya dhyan dijiye.
This is Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch and I am Aniruddha Guha and I'm sitting with Janice Sequeira because literally that's the only person I'm sitting with nowadays during lockdown. Her and our 3 cats, Audrey, Tishka and Groot. Groot is lying down next to us, his paws in my hand right now as we speak. This is the beauty of recording episodes under lockdown. We get to hang around our cats, Janice.
Yeah, I wish, in fact, I could send you guys a picture of what's happening on my table right now as we're recording this because...
Basically, Groot is rolling on the table.
Yeah, and while Aniruddha and I are trying to record this podcast, Groot, of course, thinks it's playtime.
And he's trying to get our attention.
Yeah. So, cats are strange, man. This is their time where either someone like our youngest one is always overactive at this time, and the other 2 are fast asleep in different corners of the house.
If IVM ever wants to do a podcast about pets, we are the guys to do it.
Yeah.
But this is an interesting time. Last night we watched the season finale of Homeland, which in effect is also the show finale.
It's a series finale. Yeah,
series finale. And it was interesting because for both Janice and me, we've actually, if you go back and check one of our earlier episodes, we had spoken about Homeland when the season 8 had premiered. So we had just watched the first episode and spoken about what we felt about it, what our expectations from the season was and how we felt about Homeland in general. And I think only when it ended yesterday did we realize that it is quite a historic moment in television, right? Because Homeland is one of the longest running, most loved shows of the decade. And in a way, things have just come a full circle with the show coming to an end. Because if you think about it, all the shows that we were watching from the beginning of the decade have now come to a close. So whether it was starting with Breaking Bad, Mad Men, House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, which had a 7-season run, The Americans, Silicon Valley, Veep, so many. And I think Homeland was pretty much the one that managed to last the longest, right?
Yeah, Homeland and a few others that are just like, for example, Silicon Valley, is this the final season?
Yeah, Silicon Valley has ended long time ago.
Oh God, so we're watching it very late.
Yeah, and the only one that's continuing, and I don't really count that as something that's a long-running show, is Walking Dead. Because Walking Dead...
Grey's Anatomy, which is in the 17th season.
That's what I'm saying. There are certain shows where there is enough material to keep going.
Yeah.
Grey's, of course, not based on any comic book or any such, but it's just been going on forever. And I think Walking Dead, of course, is going by the fact that Walking Dead, the comics are still being written and there's so much story still to be tackled.
So there's material there,
So I think they're also going by that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about originally written shows. I would imagine Homeland to be the last.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the last ones that at least Aniruddha and I have followed diligently. And those of you who've been loyal viewers of Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch will know that this is also one of the shows that Aniruddha and I literally started watching together at the start of our relationship when Guru and TV Guru Aniruddha was sort of doing my initiation into the world of web series and shows and just long running television shows to watch. But what's also strange, Ani, is that I remember you and I talking about the first and second episode of the 8th season, and we were actually recording at the IVM studios at that time.
Yeah.
And now 8 weeks later, hum kahan aa gaye? We are only recording from lockdown.
So you're saying basically between Homeland starting and Homeland ending,
our lives have changed.
Lives have changed.
Completely.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. So well, coming back to the season, so if, we were very impressed by the pilot actually when it came out.
Yeah.
And we also spoke about how Homeland has this ability to reel you in with very interesting ideas and interesting geopolitical issues in the first episode itself. I think mid-season through the mid-season, Janice and I started, having some certain issues with the show where we felt like, so Homeland has this amazing quality, right? Again, something I've spoken about earlier, where it starts off with a bang. It kind of accelerates things over the next 3-4 episodes, and then it kind of goes through a period of a lull before spiking like crazy around the 7th and the 9th episode mark. I think this season what happened was that spike was missing. We really enjoyed the first 5 to 6 episodes. We thought that the setup was brilliant. And just when but I also think that's got to do with expectation that you have from a series, right? So if somebody would watch season 8 of Homeland without those preconceived notions, they may not notice it as much as Janice and I did, because we are also used to a certain kind of storytelling that we were expecting and didn't get.
Yeah, I think the expectation with Homeland always, and given that this is the last ever season that the creators are going to put together, I think what we were expecting is sort of, for it to maybe, and that might be wrong, but as loyal viewers, you want that, right? You want the final season to be the best ever season and to go off on that high, where you're like, okay, what is the biggest thing that Homeland has done? Because you have seen Carrie through 7 seasons before this, in one way or another, always sort of saving the world, whether it was, a big incident or a smaller incident behind the scenes, but she's always sort of quote unquote saving the world and staying loyal to her country. So in that sense, the premise of season 8 is great, where, you sort of, the one question we've never raised of Carrie is that, can Carrie ever be a traitor to the US, right? Can she ever play for the other side? And this season plays with that beautifully, because right from the beginning, you're shown that Carrie can't remember certain parts of, what has happened in the time that she's been in Russia as a prisoner of war.
Yeah, but that was really just a setup.
Yeah.
They didn't really dwell on that much, because then the kind of events that take place on the show, and we obviously won't tell you what those are, because then we'll be entering spoiler territory. But basically, what's important to know is that Homeland is a show that has always managed to balance intelligence agency related drama with the politics of the show. And I think this season was more heavily balanced, rather was tilting more towards politics than intelligence agencies and how they work. So there was a lot of time spent in the White House, way more than in earlier seasons. In fact, they introduced a character played by Hugh Dancy, and I was really surprised to see him in episode 7, because, he came out of nowhere. And he is basically the new advisor to the president. And the moment you introduce such a great actor in a role, you expect then to be a fair degree of storytelling involved in that, right? And that is what happened. And I'm not really sure how that tied in with Carrie's and Saul's track this year.
Yeah.
I felt like too much time was spent in the White House. At a point, it started resembling House of Cards more than earlier seasons of Homeland. I also feel they didn't really do justice to that character. Again, great actor, but the track really didn't work out for me. I feel like this season of Homeland tried to balance out several tracks. One had to do with the politics of the situation. The other had to do with the conflict in the Pakistan-Afghanistan region. But the most important track, which thankfully worked, was the relationship between Saul and Carrie as they go about doing what they do best, right?
Yeah.
And
I feel like Saul and Carrie's relationship has been the one bankable relationship in this entire show, right? Because in the first 3 seasons, it was about Carrie's relationship with Brody. Then after that, for about 3-4 seasons, until they killed off Rupert Friend's character, it was about, a sort of subtle romance over there. But Saul, in a larger sense, has always been the one constant man, father figure like man in Carrie's life. And again, the interesting thing, while they didn't get many things right, like what Anil just pointed out about the advisor's character, or for that matter, even Nimrat Kaur's character, I felt like
No, also in the end, if you realize, I mean, we've watched the entire show, and again, we don't want to give out spoilers, but there were certain characters, like for example, the new president of Afghanistan, or there's this terrorist character, Jamal Haqqani. We don't really know what happened to those characters. In fact, not like we don't know what happened to them. It's just like the show didn't manage to really wrap it up with all of this cleanly done.
I like the fact that this season, even when they got other things wrong, what they got right is the relationship between Saul Berenson and Carrie Mathison, because I think till the last moment, this season makes you question their relationship and makes you also question whether Carrie is going to do another Carrie. And by that I mean, like, Carrie always f***s up, doesn't she? In one way or another. In every season, she always f***s up before she does the right thing.
Yeah.
But here, they take it to such an extent where you're like, oh God, this up has gone too far. Is there any way to repair the damage that she's done?
Yeah, and I think so here's the thing right now, whether you should watch Homeland season 8 or not, and whether we recommend it or not, is entirely dependent on how far have you gone in Homeland, which means that if you have finished season 7 and if you're planning to whether watch season 8 or not watch season 8, then you definitely should go ahead and do it, purely because whatever you might be feeling about certain tracks and certain episodes, you know that it ends really well. And that's one thing I can vouch for, which is that after really enjoying the first 7-8 episodes, the setup, and grumbling a little bit in between, I was really hoping that the show ends on a high, because that's the most important thing, right? When you're invested in a journey for so long, in characters, in storylines for almost 8 years, the least you want is a satisfying end. And while we were watching the finale last night, till the very last minute, in fact, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. But I can assure you that the moment the finale ends, you feel good, in the sense that I felt good. I felt like it was an extremely intelligent, well thought out end. It was brave. It was smart. And actually, when you think about it, the Homeland final scene encapsulates everything you love about Homeland, which is that even when you feel like it's not amounting to much, it always manages to pull the rug from under your feet. And it does that through some really smart writing in the earlier episodes. So what happens is that even when you might feel that certain episodes don't make sense or certain plots aren't going anywhere, the way it really comes together in Homeland is what really works for the show. And that's been a hallmark of Homeland's writing right through the seasons. So this season, just when I felt like I might not end up really enjoying it as much as I thought I would, the end really made it up for me. So, I mean, if you come this far into the Homeland journey and if you're wondering whether the final season is worth watching, yes, it is.
Yes, it is. I mean, for me, okay, I'm going to be really honest. I probably didn't enjoy the season as much as I wanted to. In fact, I felt like towards the last couple of episodes, there were a lot of complete matlab liberty le liya hai ki we will do whatever the we want because now the show is coming to an end. Like just basic logic loopholes, which Homeland never takes for granted because they are so clean about the procedure, and they are also very textbook about the politics and about how certain people are to be treated. And given that this is the CIA, there are major logic issues happening in the last few episodes. But like Aniruddha said, if you've already made the effort to watch the 6th season, 7th season, there is no reason for you to not finish this damn series. Also because the last 15 minutes, I think that's what it really comes down to.
No, it's still not a bad show. I mean, even with all those, the only reason, even if those complaints are something we are voicing, it's only because we have higher expectations from Homeland as compared to other shows.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, I mean, in the end, those things don't really matter. I mean, it's about what feeling it leaves you with, right?
Correct. And when you watch that last 15-20 minutes and you see how they've sort of in their way brought the show to a full circle, I mean, you finally feel like, it's the only time I think this season I was like, This at least makes sense.
Yeah, also the show's, the last episode is titled Prisoners of War.
Yeah.
Which was the original, so the show that it was based on, the Israeli show Hatufim, the English version of which means Prisoners of War. I thought it was great, I thought
nice hat tip,
it was a great sort of all of it coming round circle. And for me, it's emotional, right? Because I've adapted Hatufim for the Indian screen, written POW Bandi Youth Ke. So I feel like an entire journey has come to a close. A journey that began with Homeland, went on to Hatufim, and then went on to me writing POW Bandi Youth Ke, and then coming back to Homeland. And I feel like now it's like I said goodbye to that world last night.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I think this is one of the few shows, irrespective of whether it's been a great season, not a great season, and even in previous seasons, right? It's always been a show that we've come back to loyally. We've been a little frustrated at times with Carrie Mathison's character. We've been very exasperated with some of the politics that's happened, but we've always stayed loyal to this show. And I feel like, there's going to be a lot of nostalgia to think about the fact that next year onwards, there is no Homeland. There's no Homeland to look forward to.
Yeah, well, we've got so many distractions that I don't think it'll cross our mind.
I mean, I would like...
I think I felt it the most when I was actually watching the final episode, because then there was that realization that I'll never watch another episode of Homeland again. But also they ended it on an interesting... What I loved about the end was they ended it on a note which implied that the story could easily continue in a new direction. But as far as the story we knew has come to an end.
Yeah, which
and how ironic is it that the last two dialogues of the show are the words "stay tuned." Mm-hmm. I mean, literally, it's the last thing you would say on the finale of a show, and I think that is again an example of marvelous writing.
Yeah,
where your characters have something to look forward to, which is why stay tuned. But as far as the audience is concerned, the story has come to a close.
I don't know, some of our favorite shows have gone on to do a movie spin-off. And I think, given where they've left the show right now, it might be really, really interesting to do a movie spin-off.
To a 2-hour sort of a HBO movie.
Yeah,
maybe.
as long as Claire Danes doesn't come back as this creepy character.
It's a Showtime show, but I think a TV movie would make more sense than like a movie made for the big screen. But anyway, who's making movies for the big screen anymore?
If you are making a movie, if they do make a movie, I would like to see Costa Ronin come back, because Yevgeny's character has been one of those aankhon ko thandak moments in this entire season. I really wanted Carrie and him to get into something deeper, but anyway, that's spoiler territory. We'll leave you guys to discover it.
So Costa Ronin has now acted in 2 phenomenal shows to do with spies, The Americans and Homeland.
वो हमेशा Russian ही play करता है, उसको वो stereotype कर दिया, तू Russian
stereotype नहीं किया यार, वो Russian है तो वो Russian to play करेगा.
I'm saying that he could play multiple other things.
I'm sure, but the accent surely works in his favor, right?
Yeah.
But
alright, so what was your scene stealer moment, or what was your wow moment?
So I'll tell you what, normally Janice and I pick a wow moment of the season, but since we are saying goodbye to Homeland, I thought it would be nice for me to pick a wow moment across the entire show. And of course, 8 years is a long time. It's hard to, there are so many great plot twists you remember from the Brody days. But there was an episode that has left a forever mark on me, which is this episode called Q&A. It was in season 2 of the show, episode 5, I think. And it was an episode where basically Claire Danes' character interrogates Brody, played by Damian Lewis then. And of course, so much has happened since then. And the story's moved to a completely different place now. But that was one of the best episodes of a TV show ever. Because it was just 2 characters talking to each other over a course of a show, and had 2 other characters, Saul and the one played by Rupert Fiend, just reacting to them. And it was just so masterfully constructed. Q&A, where basically Brody comes clean about everything. And I think that 1 hour of TV, I think if I ever have to go back and rewatch Homeland, I think I'll just go back and rewatch that one episode from time to time, because it's one of the best written episodes, and I think it won the Primetime Emmy for Best Writing.
So where is Homeland Season 8 on our Binge-o-meter?
Binge-o-meter, this is a tough one. Do you have one? I would just say Homeland is one of those shows, by the way, which are enjoyable to binge, but are also as enjoyable to just to be seen one episode at a time. Because
तो इसका मतलब ये है, it's like a very heavy dessert dish. Don't eat too much of it at one time. Go easy, and maybe once in a week you can treat yourself.
No, why? I mean, we were watching it once a week because we were watching it on a weekly basis. Now all episodes are out. I'm saying that you can choose to watch it the way you wish. You know, you could do a binge if you wish to, or you could just maybe watch like 2 episodes at a time.
Alright guys, so that was Aniruddha and me bringing you yet another episode of Mr. and Mrs. Binge-Watch from lockdown. We'll be back next week, right here on the IVM Podcast Network with a brand new episode and a brand new recommendation. Until then, of course, if you guys want to follow us on our social media, I'm at Janice85 on Twitter and Instagram. Aniruddha is at Aniguha on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, if you want to hear more podcasts like this, go to the IVM Podcast app or follow them on IVMpodcast.com. I think they're also at IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram.
Remember the last vacation you took? What about the one you took 3 years ago? Okay, how much do you really remember? It's a question I've asked myself often over a decade of traveling the world. Hey, I'm Utsav and I do not travel the world for a living. I have a full-time job and responsibilities, but I have made traveling the world a priority. Priority enough that I negotiate extra leave in my job contracts, obsessively track my frequent flyer miles, and I'm willing to take off at the sight of a cheap ticket. Yes, I am cheap. I have lived and worked in 3 countries. I understand human behavior for a living. And these experiences have given me unique insights into places, people, and culture. With over a decade of travel behind me, I increasingly realized one thing, that we cannot see everything. So whatever we see, we must see deeply. Because as the film of memory decays, the imprints which will stand the test of time are the ones felt by the immersion of the senses, not by fleeting encounters with them. Postcards from Nowhere is an immersion into the world of slow travel, one story at a time. Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Do you wish you were smarter? Well, so do we. But the next best thing?
We could make you sound smarter.
And to help you with this endeavor, we are Simplified, a podcast that attempts to break down the complex world around you with a little knowledge, a lot of poor jokes, and a ton of random trivia.
Episodes out every Monday
On the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.
See ya!